Good evening, Endurance School, and welcome to Detention.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are so stoked to be back here in detention. Only Molly and I were bad people this week. We do not have a fellow detentionite. So we're going to do what we always do when it's just me and Molly in detention. And we are going to talk about what's going on in the world of racing and give you some tips and hints to become a better, faster, happier, and healthier racer yourself. So, Molly, before we get down to the gossip and stuff, what do we got for the people tonight?
We are going to be talking today, this evening, tonight. Is it afternoon or evening? When does this switch happen?
I don't know. It sure feels like afternoon where I am. I'm
I
sitting
think it's
outside and it's like 70.
it's evening in my basement. But we're in two very different parts of the world right now, as you can tell.
That's true.
Chris is somewhere where the sun shines, and I am somewhere where the gloom casts. So tonight we are going to be talking about race season, about what your training should look like, about issues that we've seen come up with athletes. We'll be talking about kind of what things look like now that we're actually getting back to in-person events, which is very, very exciting. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them into chat, but we will be talking a bit about that. But before we get into it, Chris, you have actually been doing some in-person racing. Tell us what you've been up to, and also, hi, Enid. Hi.
What's up, Enid? Um, yeah, we've actually both been doing some in-person racing. So last weekend, as you might remember, but maybe not,
Nope.
you and I, yeah, okay, I'll fill you in then.
Tell me about it.
You did great.
Thank you.
Uh, you did. Nothing like going from never time trialing to three time trials in one weekend. But last weekend, Molly and I and a bunch of other people took on the ever wonderful Deschutes River Valley Time Trial Festival, a race that is as long in fun as it is in the name. As you might expect from the title, DRBTT is three time trials over 2 days. You get a 26-mile time trial, you get an 8-mile hill climb, and then on day two, you get a monster 46-mile out and back time trial. Um, Molly, what is the defining feature of every single stage at TRVTT?
It always starts with at least a 3 mile hill. Climbing stage is just one long 8 mile hill. But every other stage has a giant, fairly steep hill that you have to climb up in order even just to get started with your day. That is one of the main constants. The other constant is that you get a time trial hold from race director George, which was absolutely wonderful. I learned how to do a time trial start. I also learned that I have been working really hard on my bicycle, and I still have a lot of work to do on my bicycle. But it's good to have things to work on. It's good to know that you still have room to improve.
I think that's probably something we're going to be talking about today, about sort of evaluating where you are at this particular moment. Um,
Wait a second,
you
Chris,
did,
where are
however,
you? How did you do with the Deschutes River Valley Time Trial Festival? I can't. How was that for you? Were you the overall winner of all of the athletes who participated? Is that what happened?
that is true.
Chris is like,
Some caveats. um, I was the only entrant in the men 1-2 category. But it was still really nice. That one great thing about DRVTT is that George does break it down into just like overall times. And some years there are a lot of really fast people there, and some years there are not. And I'm happy that this year the really, really, really fast people didn't show up. But there were definitely some people that I was involved in some competition with, which was awesome. And pushed me to my PRs on 2 out of the 3 stages there, which was awesome. I had a really, really good weekend of racing, really good numbers. Big props to my coach right on the other side of this computer screen. It was really nice to feel quick and feel strong. I had one of those like kind of magical weekends where the legs feel good in each stage. I had to pay the piper a little bit this weekend, but we'll come around to that. That is something that happens. We're not quite done with that yet because you did a 5K in between stages 1 and 2, and even though I know you're feeling like you have a little bit ways to go on your cycling, feeling pretty good about where run fitness is right now, huh?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident about my run. That was awesome. I ran really, really hard because it said on my plan that I should, and so I did because I am somebody who does what they're told. And I was lucky enough to find a running buddy. So there were 5 or 6 people who got to the start line of this, like, sort of thrown together 5K in between stages 1 and 2 on day one. And I was lucky enough to meet a new friend there. And this new friend is like the best kind of run friend that you can find. It's somebody who's like chatty and nice and supportive and significantly faster than you. So I was running as hard as I could, and she was like telling me stories and like having a delightful chat. And I was like, just don't die, just don't die. And I did, and I had a really good run for me. I was very pleased with that. I was very pleased with the 5K. That was good, hopeful information because I had just biked as hard as I could, and I was about to again.
Exactly. Yeah. That is one of the nice things about DRBTT is it gives you opportunities to kind of test out your fitness in different ways. George has said that one year he is finally going to do the True Triathlete Challenge, and he's going to set up a box right behind the Imperial River Company, which is the hotel, and it's right on the shore of the Deschutes. And you're going to have to jump into the water and then stay in the box for as long as possible, which I think he told us is like you would have to be able to swim like a 52-second 100 to even just stay in place.
Yeah, there needs to be a lifeguard there for that. I want to put that out there.
Nah, just a harpoon.
Long rope.
Yeah, exactly. So how is your recovery from DRVTT?
So it took a hot minute. That's something else that I learned is that maybe it's my advancing age. Maybe it's I don't know what it is. But it took me a while to feel like less flat. In fact, I'm still feeling a little bit flat. My workouts over the weekend, last weekend, so this past weekend, just didn't feel quite like I was able to hit numbers, but it felt hard to hit all the numbers. And then I definitely just have been feeling kind of low on motivation, which is usually the sign for me that like my ice cream consumption needs to be increased a little bit and like my bedtime needs to be moved a little earlier. So that's been kind of where I've been at, but I'm starting to feel better today. I had a good swim. I always swim better after taking a couple days off. So I'm starting to feel like I'm feeling like I can start training again, but it took me like, I want to say 8 or 9 days to really feel better. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, same. I mean, the thing about DRVTT is that like every stage, the thing that is like the arbiter of whether you do well or not is how much time you can spend at threshold. And like you spend a significant amount of time at threshold, as all of us did that weekend, and it really adds up. I mean, like, an hour at threshold is 100 TSS. It's 1.0 intensity factor. It's like, it's numbers that we don't usually go to. And at DRVTT, you do it 3 times in, pretty much 24 hours.
Yeah, I feel that way in my soul.
Yeah. I same way. Like I tried to race again this past weekend and had some trouble. And I think we'll talk about this when we get to the return to racing, but it's always this time of year that all of our athletes start being like, I don't know how to swim anymore.
I forgot how to do racing.
And we're like, no, you know how to swim. Like your legs are really tired. And that's that's definitely going on for me. Like last week in the pool was just a real struggle. Just feeling very, very off. Just because like your legs are tired, your low back is tight, you can't really like rotate the way you usually do. And the zip is just not there. So there's always like this moment in April and May when I feel like both of us get emails from our athletes that are like, seriously, I don't know how to swim anymore.
Right, right. I think, but fatigue shows up in the swim. Like that's the place that you can't hide from it. And that's I actually think of that as one of the surefire signs that my athlete is more fatigued than they're telling me. So like when you just told me that your swims last weekend weren't feeling quite zippy, I was like, oh yeah, Chris is really tired.
Yeah. And unsurprisingly, it sure showed up this past weekend. I did another stage race. I did the Cascade Gravel Omnium, which has gone better in the past.
You had some
But
very strong athletes show up this year.
yeah, last time it was a strong but thinner field. Last time I also benefited from some mistakes that some of those athletes made or had some bad luck. And this year the field was like a legitimate, like, oh my gosh, these men and women are all like very, very, very strong.
And some of them
I
were
just
able to benefit from mistakes made by Chris Begg.
I don't know if any mistakes I made benefited anybody in any material ways. But I did manage to, I did see an old friend yesterday at the race finish 2 days ago. And he was like, oh, you didn't go off course. You were doing your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that is a very generous way to put it.
You
But
won
yes,
the Chris Begg Omnium Gravel Championship.
that's true. That's true. Yeah. I went off course, hit a turn from the wrong direction and was like, uh-oh, that used to be a left-hand turn. And was then discovered my error when, sure enough, the lead pack passed me.
Oh no.
And they were all like, great job, great attack. And I was like, no, I'm no longer in the race. I am. But
that's not what that was.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not in your race. But we're gonna have there's gonna be some funny sun here in a little bit. This is gonna be like the mornings that you run Sufferfest and you turn into like a glowing avatar of light. Yeah, exactly. That's gonna be. I've got. We need like a sound effect. We do need some more sound effects for detention.
I actually think we can work on that. Let's put that on the let's put that on the note board for next week.
Okay, like a horn.
Yeah, totally.
Other races, not our races. 70.3 St. George happened this weekend. Molly, tell us about all of it.
Wow, I mean, just from everything I've heard from athletes, conditions were perfect. It was just a flawless day at the races. No, that does not seem to be the case. It sounds like St. George, which we all know to be a very hard course. A hard course on an easy day was a hard course on a hard day. So I think that a lot of people experienced a little bit of heat surprise. And they also maybe experienced some elevation surprise. I think the water was actually, from what I hear, the water was lovely. People have said that it wasn't as cold as they thought it was going to be. But I do think it was windy and hot as the day went on, and that kind of like took it out of people. And the longer you were on the course, it seemed the more it really got into your soul. So I think that it was a hard day for a lot of people, and I think that people have had to readjust some of their goals for that day. Some folks I know went into it hoping for like PRs and all that kind of stuff. And I think that at least all of my athletes underperformed for what they were hoping their times would be, but were happy to like have done a race that challenged them in that way. So I'm hopeful that that's what most people are taking away from it, that you really can't control the conditions or the day. The pro race though was amazing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you enjoyed watching?
Yeah, we had to leave at about, I think the men had just started the climb up Snow Canyon when we had to leave for the start of stage 2. But I mean, getting a chance to, I think the thing that I will take away from it was like leaving at mile 40 and sort of being like, okay, like Daniela is amazing. Holy crap, Daniela is amazing. Amy and I had a little pick'em challenge between just the two of us, where you had to pick pick the top three, and that if you picked people that were in the top three, you got a point. If you got if you got them in the correct position, you got 2 points. And then if you got what's the thing below the perfecta?
Yeah.
The perfecta is 1 and 2.
Yeah.
You get 5 points, and the trifecta is obviously
Win,
the whole
place,
podium.
and show. Yeah.
Right. Both of us picked against Daniela, and I put Daniela in second.
Why?
Like Paula is such like a big game racer. And I was like, like she's been living in Bend, like a little more altitude, like dealing with it. She's such a strong swimmer. But Daniela, as soon as Daniela came out of the water with the lead pack, I was like, this is over.
It's Daniela's day.
Yeah, exactly. And she went on to, I love watching her prove the doubters wrong. And you and I were talking about this before broadcast. It's been really, really cool to see her like continue to kind of like come forward as an athlete. I think it's so easy to forget that she's 33.
Is she really?
Yeah. I mean, like she's
a baby.
Like I know she's been a fixture. Like it seems like she's been a fixture, but like she could win, 9 Konas.
Yeah.
Like, and it's really, really cool to see her sort of like stepping up and stepping out and like being more, just out there with who she is.
Awesome.
And it's been, it's really fun to sort of cheer for her a little bit more. But I had her in second place, so I picked up 1 point in the Pick'em challenge.
Well, that's not that impressive. How are your men's?
No, it's not.
How are your men's picks?
Men's I did slightly better. I picked up 2 points on the men's side of things by picking Sanders. Once again, I did not pick the winner, but I did have him in second place.
Awesome.
But yeah, tell us a little bit about the men's race.
So the thing I love about the men's race is just the ongoing Sam Long, Lionel Sanders friendly rivalry. It does seem really friendly, but it really does seem like they both really want to beat each other, and that it's not all fun and games. And I think that they're pulling off the like competition part of that really well, at least from like the limited amount that I've seen. I love that like they feel challenged by each other. I loved the like crying, hugging finish line pictures. Like it's just awesome. It's awesome to see the two of them work as hard as they can and like really push each other and also have like a significant amount of respect for each other. And I think that that's like, it's heartwarming. I love it. I think it does good things for the sport, and I hope they both continue to battle, but do battle so well, like to have so much like resolve and just to be like such good ambassadors for sportsmanship. I think it's been very cool to see.
Yeah, it's so nice to see that you can be incredibly competitive and incredibly friendly at the same time.
Exactly. It's like what we were talking to Rach about when we were interviewing them last week. Was that just last week? Feels like longer ago. 2 weeks ago.
Justin Dare.
That's right. Yeah. Justin Dare. That's right. But yeah, when I asked Rach like how you can be both like a fierce competitor and not a jerk, I think that Lionel and Sam do a really good job of kind of demonstrating what that looks like. So I was pleased, and I'll take notes on that for when I get significantly better at riding my bicycle, and I have to be, much more like cool about it.
You are already significally better at riding your bicycle.
I am, and there's still so much way to go. It's amazing.
that will always unfortunately be the case.
Yeah, unless I can get some real powerful legs going. I'm doing my squats.
There you go. Yeah. Super stoked to see Magnus Detlev land on such a big podium.
Yeah.
As a triathlete who tended to only have one card to play myself when I was racing, it is really nice to see one of the almost exclusively bikers kind of come through. And I think we also need to do a show about like the Scandinavian takeover at some point. Like, oh my gosh, They like that whole corner of the triathlon world is just amazing.
That's a great idea. We should do that show. We should also have CBCG Scandinavia camp,
Yes, for sure.
obviously, where we swim in the
Yeah.
fjords.
I'm in. I
I am
mean, like
too.
that's that sounds amazing.
I'm going to be looking for
Um,
sponsors.
all right, so yeah, let's turn to our main topic today. So we are yeah, we're talking unsurprisingly after we've chatted for about 20 minutes about racing and getting back to racing, about returning to racing this year and ways to do it. And yeah, I mean, so first topic, Molly. So thinking about goals after a year of no races, what are some ways that we can be, you know, what are some ways that we can set some effective and helpful goals after we haven't raced for so long?
I think treating this almost as though it's your first race is not a bad idea. I think that a lot really depends on how you've been approaching training over the past year. I think some people have been training really hard. I think some people have had some like fits and starts. I think some people have managed to rehab some injuries. Some people have had new ones show up. Like everybody's in a very different spot. But that being said, it's kind of never a very good idea to put some like big expectations on your performance. So I think the folks who I hope will hear this message are the people who've been working really hard and are ready to see some of that pay off. I think that even for people who've been really diligent about training, and I'm talking to myself as somewhat as well as I'm heading into Chattanooga, but like a lot can still go wrong in a day of racing, and a lot can still, like, especially when it's been so long since we've done this. It's not a great idea to put expectations on how you perform. It's a much better idea to kind of like let it come to you, as I know you've said before, of like let the race happen, and do what you can with the moment. But like it's going to be really easy, I think, to put so much pressure on yourself and your performance that it's easy to get kind of thrown off your game when things inevitably do go imperfectly. Like you forget your race belt, or, you know, like you drop your nutrition or something like that. Like something that you can and will fix, but that you need to be able to be in a kind of like nimble mental space in order to fix it and fix it well. And as we know, like if you lose that nimble mental space, your race is effectively over. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really easy to like spiral, like
Mm-hmm.
once you lose that nimble mental space. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a great way to put it, because like you lose that ability to be resilient. And you know, I mean, like the whole point of all this stuff is like developing that resiliency, and like as a person, as an athlete. And yeah, these first races back, like, you know, having like making room for things to go wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and then giving yourself kind of permission to be flexible as you recover from them.
And to remember that this race does not define you, that this race
Mm-hmm.
doesn't define the time that you spent over the past year or however much longer than that, that you've spent training really hard and focusing on, you know, when it comes back to racing, like when it's time for racing again. It's now time for racing, but this does not mean that that you made or broke the time that you spent over the past year or so training. And I think that's another important thing to remember too. And I definitely fall into some of that like magical thinking a little bit myself. Like I really secretly wanted to like show up at DRBT and like Molly got like amazing at cycling. And that's still like, even though I put a solid year into that and I have gotten a lot better and totally like, I've really done a lot of work on riding my bicycle. That like Molly's gotten amazing at cycling moment is years away still. And it's not going to show up like out of the blue, you know, like it's not going to be like surprise. It's going to be the result of a lot of work. And so I think that there's a tendency to kind of put that like, well, maybe like I'll come back and all of my hard work will mean that I've been, you know, like that now I'm like the athlete that I would like to be. But we're always working to improve, I think, is the takeaway.
Yeah, right. Like there's that feeling that like all of a sudden it's going to be like simple and easy.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like, you know, it's never simple or easy. It's always like hard. And but as you're discovering, and as we all discover, I was like reminded of this past weekend, is like, it's always hard, and like some days it goes well and some days it's just hard.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. But I really like what you put in our notes about like, do your goals for this year match what you have imagined yourself for 3 years from now? Because it's so easy upon returning to racing to like all of a sudden like rewrite that 3-year plan and be like, I'm going to be amazing at like, I'm going to figure out the swim, like it's going to happen. And it's like, well, like, no, that's on a timeline and you can't really rush it. But that like, the goals for this year should probably be pretty modest and should act in service of those bigger picture goals.
Exactly. Exactly. Because this isn't something that like, I think that the act of becoming a triathlete can be really transformative for people. But the truth is that in this sport, those transformations take very long. So like in that first year where you like went from being not a triathlete and then turned into a triathlete, like transformation. But then after that, like the transformation happens like with diligent work. And that's a boring kind of transformation. That's not quite as like glitzy. That's a
Yeah, no, I
transformation
want like,
that's hard.
you think we should just like read the Velveteen Rabbit instead of the rest of the show?
Yeah, probably. That's probably right.
Same message, right?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Um, what's race return fatigue?
Oh my goodness. So I think that we've experienced a little bit of this in the last couple of weeks. I know that you have because you've done 2 weekends in a row of racing.
Yeah.
But there's definitely like there's a lot of excitement about returning to racing. There's a lot of excitement about like getting to see our friends and like getting to wear our kit and like washing our bike and doing all this stuff and like where's my things, and we're traveling and we're hanging out and we're getting dinner and we're eating pancakes, and like we have not left our houses in a year. Like it is a big shock to the system, I think, to like have to step out of that routine. And even though it's good stuff, like to be spending time socially and to be getting ready for races, it's a lot of new and it's a lot of like energy output. And I think that we're finding that people are recovering a lot slower and just feeling kind of drained, but from the like activity around racing. And I think that that's completely understandable, especially for people who are somewhat more on the introverted side, which I know that both of us secretly are. You certainly are, but
Racing while introverted.
right? You're like, it's so good to see my friends. I have to go take a nap.
Yep. Too much.
Yep, that's enough. That's enough now.
Yeah.
But yeah, how have you been experiencing that as somebody who like definitely does get like tired from that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Like I have learned over time that I really can't involve myself too much in the sort of pageantry of race weekend. It's like at DRVTT, like Amy and I tend to stay at the little like fly fishing camp down the road. Because as awesome as staying at the Imperial is, it's just too much for me. Like you're always on, you're always talking to somebody, you're in that central courtyard, and like pretty soon, like I am just like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. Yeah, like same thing out here in Bend, like a lot of our friends are out here. And, but over the years I've discovered like in a lot of ways, like the fact that the pandemic has changed the way we do expos is like wonderful for me. Because like I hate going to expos. I hate going to packet pickups. Like it's like, my athletes will know that I tell you that like the expo is the place where your race dies. And that's not totally true. That is definitely like a big like bias of mine. But like, I also like I made some mistakes this past weekend that would have been solved by like a in-person pre-race briefing or perhaps a slightly better reading of the racer guide.
Now by better, do you mean at all?
like as with everything, I feel like I'm not completely in the wrong here,
No.
but I can also recognize that there is some accountability on my side. However, I would like to say that if your website says the race starts at 9 and then you put in the racer guide that it starts at 8:30, you should also really change the race start on the website.
Okay,
That's
I'll
it.
agree with that. I will grant you that one. Did you show up to your
Yeah.
race a little late?
I made it to the start,
Okay. Okay.
but then doubled down the next day and started the race in the wrong place.
Okay. Okay, so like what did you learn from these experiences?
I mean, like, yeah, it's definitely a bit of like humble pie as somebody who like is like, please read this thing that I just sent you. And like, I've been doing bike racing for a long time.
Hmm.
You're really supposed to read the technical guide,
Hmm.
even if it is a race that you have done before. Maybe even more so if it's a race that you've done before.
Hmm.
But yeah, so maybe that's a little bit of return to race fatigue. Maybe that's a little bit of just like not hitting my my sort of like racing groove at this point. But that's probably my biggest casualty of like returning to race fatigue.
Yeah, I think that, and that's probably we're gonna put a pin in that for a little bit later too, of like the how do I do this again conversation, which comes in just a moment. But first,
Exactly.
we're gonna talk a little bit about what your training should look like. So now we've done the like early season training. Did we do the mid-season? This is kind of like mid-season training, isn't it?
This is like early mid,
Yeah.
like I feel like when we did early season training, I think we definitely said like it's not time for race paced efforts.
Right.
Like you're actually probably going to be a lot above it and a lot below it. But
Now it's time.
now I think it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's time for race-paced efforts, especially for those race-paced efforts that like we don't do that often, like half Ironman pace. Like
Yeah.
very little of your training should be done at half Ironman pace in the general year. Like it's not a super useful zone. It's a pretty fatiguing zone. Like it is not as useful as threshold, not as useful as, or about as useful as like threshold. I don't know. It's not as useful really as like above 70.3 or below 70.3 for doing the specific things that those zones need to do.
Yeah.
But it is useful on 70.3 race day, like as the effort that you need to be racing at. So it's good to remind yourself what that effort feels like, and to like get out there and do some race pace efforts, especially like over a long ride, to make sure that like you know what that ride feels like in your body, or over the course of a long run to know what that run feels like in your body, especially when you are a little bit fatigued. So in the like 6 weeks leading up to a 70.3, I absolutely do put some like 70.3 efforts into athletes' training plans just for a little bit of like familiarity and confidence, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause you're getting that like muscular recruitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we might have done some like TTE work in the months leading up to this, but like usually it's going to be at a lower cadence,
Mm-hmm.
and like all the stuff that we do in like the early season training. But yeah, like I think this past weekend you had 6 by 10 minutes at sweet spot, like basically 70.3 effort, trying to get like a handle again on like, okay, what does this feel like at 90 RPM?
Right, exactly. And
You
like,
know,
really, I can sustain this? Doesn't feel like it.
yeah, exactly. And
Right.
like in the pool, this is when we start throwing stuff at athletes where they're doing pace change stuff, but it's like right around that like slightly below threshold. I'm realizing that we're talking about this as if all of our athletes are only training for 70.3s.
That's a good
Um,
point. That's a good point. If you have an early Ironman
um,
or an early Olympic distance, this is different.
right. Like for those athletes doing Tulsa, at the moment, they're all of a sudden shifting into like 75 to 80% of FTP. And for those athletes who are going to be doing like an Olympic distance, like I think for them, they might have it a little bit easier because they've probably been doing some threshold stuff like in the last few weeks and stuff. But, for those Olympic distance athletes, it's probably like over under time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go through a corner. I'm going to go over a small hill. I have to pass somebody. It's the time of the year when like we get away from the thing where we're like workouts aren't rehearsals and we're like actually
This is a little bit
workouts
of
are
a rehearsal.
rehearsals.
It's a little bit. It's like a dress rehearsal. Like you want to go through, you want to like hit your points, targets. I don't know. What's it called when you have to stand on something in a play?
Oh, your mark.
Your mark. You hit your mark. Thank you.
Yeah.
You want to hit your marks. You want to wear your outfits. You want to like do the thing at the effort that you're supposed to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Dress rehearsal, not tech rehearsal.
Not tech
Good
rehearsal.
Lord.
No.
Oh,
No.
the worst.
So bad. Then you just stand there
Yeah,
while somebody changes gels. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Talent hates the tech rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you just get a mannequin?
Right.
Come on.
So we have race intensity. We have, course specificity, which is something that I love for athletes to find because this is sneaky coach giveaway here. Pro tip, coaches. It does a really good job of getting athletes to look at the course profile. And I think that a lot of times athletes are surprised. Like, they're like, oh, it has a lot of climbing. Oh, there's a lot of elevation. Oh, I didn't know where my start was. Like, all that kind of stuff. But, like, I think that if you give an athlete like the 4-hour ride, like try to find something that is around the elevation profile that you would experience, like try to put together using the materials you have available, like the West Hills and Savi and like 30 and all that stuff. For those of you who are here in Portland, how can you put together something that is going to be as race specific as possible? Not only do you get the experience of actually like training on that specificity, but you also have to like dive into some of those maps and elevation charts and be like, okay, this looks like this kind of hill. And I think that can be really helpful. It helps you identify some of those, like, I didn't drink enough when I was climbing that big long hill. Like, I need to be ready to do that on race day.
Right. Like, yeah, for our athletes who did St. George, like finding like, okay, let's find that like shallow 5-mile climb, and get you a chance to be like, this is what Snow Canyon's going to feel like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bike
and for you, like Chattanooga, like, like sort of a lumpy course, but without like a ton of like sustained climbing. Like it's more of like a punchy, like a punchy day.
Just like me. That's right.
Yeah, like a lot of like Hillsborough and North Plains is kind of where you should probably be.
Yeah.
That's sort of like Helvetia
Bethany
area.
Yep. Totally.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm gonna go out and ride
exactly.
around
It's
like
all
Dairy
that, just
Creek. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, and let's see, our last piece about training. I really like this one. So being specific about your tapering. Tell me a little bit about this. How should athletes be approaching their early season racing tapers?
So I think that the biggest reason I put this in the thing here, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because every race can't be your big race. And if you try to taper for every race like it's your big race, you're not going to have enough training to get your big race done the way you want it to get done. Because in order to like roll into a race properly tapered, you do need to reduce your training volume. And if you're continually doing that, like for a few weeks beforehand, and like we don't tend to give very long tapers, but like but they're real. We're strategic about them. But if you're continually like giving yourself a full taper before races, you're just never going to get that much fitter as the race season goes on. So, and you can only really like peak for a race, once every couple of months, depending on who you are, how long you've been doing this, what your goals are, all that stuff, what you consider peaking. But yeah, I think that, that people either give themselves too much of a taper or too little. So pick one race and really have like a strategic taper for it. Pick one race that you really want to do well in this spring. Maybe one race you really want to do well in this fall, and sort of plan your way through those. But for the races that fall in between, don't just try to like train through them. I think every race should be a race day. Even if it's just a couple of days that you're giving yourself to like have a little bit of time off of your feet. It's a lot of intensity. It's a lot of volume, especially if you're doing longer distance racing, like a 70.3. Even an Olympic distance, depending on like how long you're going to be out there, that could be a big like dose of volume to your training plan, depending on where you are right now. So give yourself a couple of days leading into it and leading out of it to make sure that you are rested enough and recovered enough to resume normal training.
Absolutely.
Did I get all of that? What else you want to add?
Of course,
to that?
Yeah. No, I like the piece about it being like a test, I think is such a great way to think about it, because like these can't be like, we can't be a calendar full of A races. And like, ideally the races should build upon each other as we go through the year. And this happens in cyclocross season, is you get a whole, especially in Oregon, you can race 3 times a week in September if you want to, and completely destroy the rest of your season if you just go full gas, 3 races a week. Unless you start thinking like, okay, you know what? I'm going to use this Wednesday race as a chance to work on starts. I'm going to use this Saturday race as a chance to work on attacks or closing gaps or things like that. And I think that each of these early season races, can be sort of like an assessment, and so, yeah, like the tapers should be short enough to allow you to feel a little fresh, but like not so long that, because the thing that we end up into that you're talking about is like that sawtooth pattern of fitness once racing starts, where you're neither moving forward nor resting.
Exactly. You're stagnant, and we don't want stagnancy. We're all about freshness here at the Endurance School.
We're about freshness, or like mind-numbing fatigue,
right?
because both of those will help us move forward in some way.
Exactly. Freshness for our big races, mind-numbing fatigue for the rest of our lives.
Everything else.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're welcome, world.
Yep. Hey, you all signed up for this.
That's right. It's true.
Yeah. You want to be a little more fresh? Go play squash. Actually, squash is really
hard, I think. It's very anaerobic.
Yeah, it's a great sport. I really like it for some reason. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you're not very anaerobic. Maybe you are. Maybe you're surprising me.
I'm tall and I'm good at ping pong.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
That forgives a lot in the squash room.
Hand-eye coordination, deeply competitive. Yeah, I can see
it. Yeah, and totally. And people can't hit the ball over me.
No, because who could? You fill the space that you're in.
Yeah, exactly. So, how do you even do this anymore?
You mean racing? I don't know. God, yeah. I hope I find out before Chattanooga.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, you got a little dose of this at DRBT, right? Mm-hmm. Like that sense of like, oh my gosh, it's race morning. Like, how did you handle that?
So I think that the first thing that I always do before races is I am somebody who over prepares when I'm nervous. So like if I am feeling a little bit like unsure about how things are going to go, I will usually start getting ready like a week in advance. And then you have time to go do things like you realize that like the tubes that you have in your bike box are really for your gravel bike. And so like you should really probably get like tubes that are going to go in your TT bike. Like you get to undo all of the silly mistakes that have happened over like a year and a half of that bike being on your trainer. You also get to find out that like, maybe some of your stuff's broken. Like maybe your derailleur hanger is not like looking quite so right. Maybe like your chain is filthy. Like you get to do some of the stuff that if you try to get ready the night before, you just don't have time for. Like you're out of nutrition. Like when's the last time I used sports nutrition? Like never. So yeah, I think that getting ready early is a really good idea. It's certainly the one that I fall back on. And leaving yourself some time to undo some mistakes that may have been done due to lack of attention to racing over the last couple of months, years, the last bit.
The last time
since racing. That would be my big advice is get ready early and set it up a week in advance. Like make sure you have all of your stuff and like go from there. What about you?
That's a great way to make sure that we all have our stuff.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. One week out.
What's a good way? You put the lists. I love the race list.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, that was so smart.
I know. Yeah. You guys can, there's plenty of lists out there. If you go to our website and just do a search for race packing, you'll find Amy's like incredibly extensive Excel spreadsheets that she has broken out for different kinds of races. The gravel, cyclocross, triathlon, running, foreign, domestic, like a whole bunch of different things. It really, really helps to have that list. It allows me time to make mistakes like forgetting to read the race brief.
You're not going to live that one down for a long time, are you? That's going to go right into your psyche.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That one is there forever.
Oh God.
But yeah, making lists, using lists, because if it's because if you the great thing about a list is like once it's crossed off, you're like, I know I packed that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So is that why the next thing on this list of things that you should do beforehand is go to the race briefing?
Yeah, or at least read it.
Okay.
Yeah, the stage 3 had 2 different start lines, which again, like the website thing, is a little confusing. There was like we had to start at a school, and then we rode together to the timing start, and then we all stopped there like a start line, and then started the race. And so what had happened is I was like, oh, well, that's the start line. I'm just going to ride out there. Rode out there. There was no one there except for the timer, who was like, I think you're supposed to be at the school.
Oh no.
And then so I rode back to the school. I did hitch up with the group as they came by. Totally not a problem, because like they weren't actually racing. But bike computer then thought that I was finishing the race, and so flipped the course around. And then for the next 75 minutes, until I went off course, was trying to route me back to the start line instead of giving me the race directions.
Your technology was working
again,
against you.
This all could have been fixed by me reading the race briefing.
Oh, that's
no,
decent.
only because I set it up to fail. But yeah, it was hilarious. Okay, but now, how about race day itself? Talking about how do we even do this anymore? So we talked to our athletes about this like energy management. A little bit about that and how we use it. Ooh, I'm afraid that I have frozen. If I'm coming through anymore, so I'm just going to keep talking, and we're going to see if things come back. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me? I can hear you. But
I can hear you.
okay, good. Now you seem to be back.
Okay, sweet.
All right.
Our little internet hiccup has passed.
We heard all the things that you said,
Nice.
but
Okay. I think
but
we
you
are
did
back.
get frozen. But now you're back again.
Nice. Marvelous. My favorite. But yeah, I was asking you about the energy management spectrum. What is it, and how can we use it to the best of our ability?
So I think when we're talking about the energy management spectrum, we are talking about like your level of like stress arousal at the start line, and even for some athletes in the week or so leading up to the race. But like we're specifically talking about race day in this scenario. So if we think about that on a spectrum of between 1 and 5, we want that stress feeling, that like excitement and, a little bit of fear, which is totally reasonable. It's you're in for at least some amount of hurt if you're doing it right. So a little bit of fear is okay. And we want that to be somewhere in the like 2.5 to 3.5 out of 5 range. So we want you to be a little bit like excited and stressed and like, kind of ready for it. But if you feel like that's too low, like if you get to the start line and you're just not quite feeling that like race day ready feeling, that's a time when caffeine can come in handy if you are a person who uses caffeine. If not, then some like music. The start line usually does a pretty good job of pumping you up. So like go to the start line and like, just let some of that race day vibe wash over you. It's super fun. Visualization can be really helpful here too. So think about yourself having an awesome day. Think about yourself being really successful. Visualize yourself just like going out there and crushing it. However, I think that more often the flip side is true, and people are feeling just a little bit too much of that stressful arousal, like fear and panic and all that kind of stuff. And that is something to really practice. And I think that this is another reason why, like, our race gluttony of this year, where we have so many races that seem to have landed on the calendar all at once, why this can kind of come in sort of handy. Like, some of those races don't need to be as important, but they can be really good places to practice your response to fear and stress. So meditation is really helpful. Breathing is really helpful. This is another time when we're like doing a little bit of visualization can be very helpful. I am a huge fan of putting the hood up on my hoodie and walking away from the people. For me, there's nothing more stressful than a bunch of athletes freaking out. That makes me freak out. So I walk away from them. You should too.
Yeah, because like you're the only person who can like change your circumstance on race morning. And if you allow yourself to get like stuck in that like gaggle of athletes that's stressing you out, I hate to say it this way, but you only have yourself to blame. You know, and like same thing, yeah, like but we all have this, that sort of fight or flight reaction. That's such a good thing. It means you care. Like, anxiety is just something's going to happen, I don't know what. And anxiety has like very understandably kind of gotten a bad name, because there is a lot of like, pretty negative effects associated with it. But on race day, it just means that you don't know what's going to happen. And we hate to say this, you will never know what's going to happen on race day. And so recognizing that it's going on and doing the things that allow you to get back to that 2.5 to 3.5, whether that's stepping away, whether that's taking some caffeine, whether that's listening to music, whether that's breathing, that's just you practicing your energy management skills. And again, like getting back to this thing that Molly and I always talk about is like owning your race and owning your experience.
Absolutely. I think that's super important. So I think that's actually a good segue into like, Chris, what happens now that we have all of these races that we're signed up for? Like, how are you helping your athletes to navigate the like very often crowded 2021 season?
Yeah, I think that it goes back to like a lot of what you were talking about at the beginning about like, okay, let's look at these and figure out what each of them means. Because I think that one thing that I see happening with our athletes a lot is that very quickly every race becomes like the most important race on the schedule. And it's this sort of like, you're sort of putting your fitness in this kind of like, what have you done for me lately position? And like your fitness doesn't want to be treated like that. Like, your fitness is a flexible thing. It goes up and down. But I think that what you were saying about like figuring out like, what does this race mean? Is this something that we're really going to taper for and try to be super sharp? Is this something that builds towards the next race? Is this something that builds towards like next year's race? Like, is your 3-year goal that you want to get to Kona and this year you're doing your first Ironman? Like, for sure, this Ironman can lead you to that goal, but not if you try to qualify for Kona at this first race. Then you're just going to have a really hard day. So I think that sitting down with your coach, or if you're self-coached, just sitting down with a piece of paper and deciding for yourself, like, what do each of these races mean, so you can train through a race if you need to. If you suddenly see that you have like 4 70.3s in 4 weekends, that like maybe that approach to like training and racing, that's just going to put us back in that place that you were talking about, that sawtooth stagnation. Maybe some of those races can be deferred again, or wholesale bailed on. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to be there all the time. But the important thing that I think we're trying to land on here is be strategic and come up with a plan.
Exactly.
Bounce that plan off of somebody else. Be like, hey, I'm thinking about setting 4 PRs in 4 weekends at 470.3. What do you think about that?
Don't do that. That's a bad idea. Don't do that. You're going to be a shell of yourself. You'll probably end up doing none of those, because your first one will be like the horrible pulling off the Band-Aid experience, and then you'll just be tired.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're closing in on finishing up here. What are we've talked about a lot of specific things. What what are sort of the big picture approaches that you are taking for your own training and for your athletes training this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for my own training and for my athletes' training, the big thing that I'm hoping that people focus on early in the season, especially, but really like always, is a sense of appreciation and gratitude that we get to do this. This has been a really hard year for everyone. For everyone in the whole world has experienced some amount of loss and stress, and I think that this is a time where like we finally get to start doing this thing that we love to do again, and it is easy to get swept up in it, and it is easy to like lose sight of you know the reality of the rest of the world right now. And I think that the athletes that I'm working with are luckily doing a really good job with this, but please do the best you can to like set an example of like positivity and gratitude. The one caveat that I will say to this, because like what I love to see all the like social media, like everybody's pictures and all of that kind of stuff. We've done the VT, how to keep it classy on social media spiel about like not making excuses for a race that's gone wrong. The one caveat I'm going to give to that though is if you did have something happen out on the race course and you will not be finishing, I'm looking at you for the person who let us know that you were okay. Like, I want to know that. Like, absolutely do post something. Tell everybody that you're all right. Because we are tracking you and we want to know that you're okay. And if we see that, like, you DNF for some reason, we want to know that you are healthy and safe and happy and at least like doing the best you can to get back on the course again. And we had a few people who that happened to over the weekend, and like we do want to hear about that. That's not the same, but the the stuff that happens in races, like this is not the time for that kind of like race sadness. Like this is the time for gratitude and high fives.
Instead of putting a race report about the things that happened to you in your Strava title, thank the race director. Like, go find the race director and be like, I know you have had an incredibly stressful and scary year. We really appreciate that you're putting on this race.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Oh, those poor race directors too. Like, this has been a hard year for their businesses. Be nice to the race directors.
Yeah. Like we thought coaching was going to have a real valley. I mean, they didn't like, they have completely seen their income streams dry up for a year, and probably another year because of deferrals and stuff. So yeah, be nice to the race directors, thank them. The big reason they do this is because of that engagement with athletes, not because they're trying to make $1 million, because they're not.
If you made $1 million being a race director, everybody would do it.
Yeah. I've decided to, instead of putting anything pertinent about the race in my Strava reports, to simply title them with a never-ending stream of comic book explosion noises. So stage 2 was Daka 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 Daka. And then yesterday, Sunday, was perfectly Pafoom. Pafoom being the best of the comic book explosion
That's
sounds.
Great.
Yeah.
You can feel free to start putting those in your training peaks.
There you go. That's a great idea. If you want to go down a real fun rabbit hole, just Google comic book explosion sounds. You will never have realized how many different versions of Baroom appear in comics.
That's wonderful. That's great news.
Yeah. There's one entry for every different number of O's in Baroom.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's great.
Goes out pretty far.
I bet it
goes
does.
Out to like 12 O's.
I bet it does. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. It's like pie.
Going on forever.
Exactly.
So we actually have a lot of people who did St. George, who are here in the chat and in the lurkers tonight. So we want to send a big congratulations to all of you. It was a really hard day, and we know that, and we saw that. And like, I know for some of you it was harder than others, but I know that people had mechanicals and bike accidents and, hot days and long days, and congratulations. It's a real accomplishment to do a hard course on a hard day. So yay for you guys and congratulations. I hope you're as proud of yourselves as we are of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like way too, like, it's like you didn't even tear the Band-Aid off. You were like, I'm going to tear off this major wound dressing.
Right? I'm going to set this Band-Aid
Like
on
St. George
fire.
is so hard.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's good. Like, we like that. It's nice to see people embracing difficulty rather than running from it. And that is why we're doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're pulling for you. And if this wasn't your race, then we know that you will have your race soon. So yeah, keep getting out there. Congratulations to everybody. It's so good to see you too. Thank you for coming and joining us here at Detention. My radiator is just kicking on. Oh God, this is a bad sign. I can hear it.
Your radiator always wants to be involved in every broadcast.
I know. It's either going to be like making thumping sounds or just like pumping heat while I'm on my trainer. But what other announcements do we have, Chris Bag? We have everyone, please come join us for Thursday morning Zwift Ride. We're really embracing the social aspect of Zwift Ride on Thursday mornings right now. So jump on Discord. We're gonna do chat. You can chat with us if you're one of our subscribers. You can get in there and talk and all that kind of stuff. And if not, then you can also hang out in Twitch and chat for free and tell us about, what we should talk about, what we should have for breakfast, all the important things. Who do we have for Detention next week?
So next week is going to be awesome. We have a double billing. We have professional triathletes Carrie Lesser, who I believe is in the top 10 at St. George this past weekend, and her partner Scotty DeFilippis, longtime professional triathlete himself. And both of them had a huge hand in putting together the Professional Triathletes Organization. So we're going to be able to talk to them about that. In terms of things coming up, we have a swim clinic. It is May 16th. Please come and join us, Vancouver Lake Park. The details are on our website. You can find them in the shop. We also have a run clinic in June where we're going to do some video analysis. It's going to be amazing. And we have 4 spots for Bend Camp 2021. August Heat Camp. Get ready for those fall races. So if you are interested in coming to any of those things, just drop a little chat in chat and we'll get back to you if you need a link or anything. But I think that is the end of our announcements. I hear the late bus blowing up, Molly.
Oh no, it's time. It's time to go. Oh no, we're over time.
That means we got to get out of here.
Okay.
We're gonna miss the late bus.
All right, we gotta go. Here's to a healthier,
such a long walk home. Happier
and faster
tomorrow.
Goodbye, people.